What's up, everyone? I'm Joe Pompliano, and this is the Joe Pomp Show. Today, we're going to talk about one of the best young coaches in the NFL, Mike McDaniel. Now, he's obviously the coach of the Miami Dolphins. They're, again, one of the best teams in the NFL, certainly this year, and they were very good his first year last year as well. He has turned around the career of Tua Tagovailoa, and the team looks really good. They look like they could be competing for a Super Bowl this year. But more importantly than what's happening on the field, I want to talk about Mike McDaniel's story off the field. I think it's one of the most incredible things that we have in sports today. His path from being a young kid that just loved football and was trying to get around the Denver Broncos to putting up 70 points on them 2 weeks ago when they played them in Miami. Now, he could have broke the record. I mean, they had 70 points with 8 minutes left in the game. The NFL record is 73, set in 1940, I believe it was, by the Chicago Bears. And he could have set the record, but he didn't. He showed some mercy. He killed the clock and he left points on the board. But I think the best place to start in this story is with his childhood. So Mike McDaniel grew up in a town that's essentially an hour north of Denver, Colorado. He loves sports. He's a only child, and he was raised by a single mother, so he didn't know his dad. But he loves sports, and particularly football. So every summer, Mike McDaniel would ride his bike 20 minutes to the Denver Broncos training camp, which was closer to his town than Denver, obviously. So he rides his bike there, and he's doing this every single day for years and years and years. And one day, when he's 10 years old, his life fundamentally changes forever based on the training camp story. So I know this is going to sound made up, but it's not. It's not a movie script. It's actually what happened. You can go check all of this on the internet, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised that it's all true. And what happened is Mike McDaniel goes to camp one day. He takes his bike there, and he used to do this thing where he would go through the line and try to get autographs, and then he would try to weasel his way back through for a second line of autographs. He would get them to sign other things or whatever. Player cards that he had, or footballs, or mini helmets, or whatever it was. So one day when he's 10 years old, he goes to camp and he does this exact same thing. He goes through the line once, he gets everyone's autograph, and then to go through the line a second time, he doesn't want to be recognized. So he takes off his hat. He's wearing a Charlotte Hornets, essentially baseball hat. He puts it on a stone wall and walks back through the line. He gets the autographs. But the problem is when he returns, the hat is missing off the wall. So Shanahan's super upset. It was his favorite hat. He starts crying, and he runs over to an assistant coach on the Denver Broncos named Gary McCune. Now, Gary was an assistant video director at the time, and Gary tries to help him find the hat, but he can't do it. Mike McDaniels is crying still, so he says, just come back tomorrow, I'll make it up to you. He comes back, and Gary went to the mall that night to buy the same exact hat that he was missing, and he gave it to him the following day. Now, obviously super nice by Gary, a nice guy. He gives the hat to Mike McDaniel, and he tells him, hey, bring your family here tomorrow. I'll give you guys a behind-the-scenes tour of the facility. I see you guys here all the time. It'd be my pleasure to walk you around, let you meet some of the players, let you meet some of the coaches, and give you a day to remember. Now, obviously, Gary doesn't know what's about to happen, and neither does Mike, but Mike runs home. He tells his mom, hey, we got to go to the facility tomorrow. They're going to give me a tour. Let's do it. They end up going the next day. Gary gives them a complete tour of the facility, meets Mike McDaniel's mom. They start dating, they fall in love, and they get married. Seriously, they literally got married. So the family ends up moving closer to Denver so they can be with Gary while he's working for the team. Gary is obviously now Mike McDaniel's stepfather, and he's closer to football than he's ever been in his entire life. So Gary gets him a job as a Denver Broncos ball boy his senior year in college. He's obviously not with the team 24/7, but he's working on the field during the games. McDaniels called it a dream come true. He ends up going to a better high school from an academic standpoint and gets a full-ride academic scholarship to Yale. He walks on the football team at Yale, although he's not a very good player. Mike McDaniel's 40 years old today, but he's 5'9", 180 pounds. So he's not a big dude. He played wide receiver. And many people actually talk about it now, saying that he used to stand on the sidelines and tell you whether a play. He would listen to the coaches calling the play to the starting quarterback. He would tell the other players on the team whether that play was going to work or not, and guess how many yards they would get from each completion or run or whatever it was. And the reason he was able to do this was because he was watching a tremendous amount of film. He knew the coverages that the defense was running, and he knew the percentage chance that a play was going to be successful, almost sometimes more than the coaches did themselves. So everyone around him knew, hey, man, this guy is not the best physical athlete. He's not a freak by any sense of the word, but he is a football savant. He understands the game, and he has an incredible mind for this stuff. So college ends. He ends up playing essentially 0 minutes his entire career, but he's on the team. He gets a letter and all of that. And then Mike McDaniel tries to go out to figure out what he wants to do for his career, right? Life after school. He gets a job at an investment bank, and he tries it out for 3 months through an internship. But he quickly realizes this is not what he wants to do. This guy just loves football. He lives, eats, and breathes football. So he says, if I can't be passionate about this career, I'm not going to be successful. The one thing I am passionate about is coaching football and football itself. I'm going to go try to pursue that passion. So he calls in a bunch of his connections. Obviously, his stepfather was an employee for the Denver Broncos for many years. He ends up getting an internship with the Denver Broncos that year after college. He's only 21, 22 years old at the time. So he does what every young person should do, which is try to do the thing that your boss hates the most. So the boss in Denver at that time was Shanahan, and he liked doing what they call overlays, which is putting the words or the information behind a play on the screen while they're looking at the highlight or the film. And the other coaches hate doing this because it's manual data entry at this point. I mean, we're talking about, I think it was like 2005. He's literally going in, he's typing in the details of the play for every single play throughout practice, scrimmage, games, whatever it is, so that the head coach can refer to that while looking at the play. And he ends up obviously being buddy-buddy with the coach because of that. His year-end internship ends that following season, and he gets another job opportunity, this time with the Houston Texans under Gary Kubiak's staff. And the reason why this was so important is because Houston is where he meets Kyle Shanahan. And we'll get to why that's important in a second. But Houston was good and bad. He ends up making a name for himself as someone who understands the game of football. He obviously gets connected with Kyle Shanahan, who becomes a mentor of sorts and part of his coaching tree down the line. But Mike McDaniel actually got fired when he was on the Houston Texans staff. Many people don't know this about him, but I think it was 2008. He showed up late to a 6 a.m. meeting for the second time, and head coach Gary Kubiak literally fired him on the spot. He said, "You can't take this seriously. Why should I take you seriously? You're fired. See you later. You're done." And this sucked. I mean, anytime you lose your job, it's unfortunate, but specifically in the NFL, when you're a young coach, he's 25, 26 years old at the time, trying to make a name for himself, these opportunities are incredibly scarce. So he felt like his life was over. He felt like he just royally screwed up. And to be fair, he did to some extent. But he does the next best thing, which is not quitting. Mike McDaniels accepts a running backs coach job for a team in the United Football League, the UFL. Now, this is essentially what is equivalent to the XFL or the USFL today. It was a spring football league attempting to make a name for itself alongside the NFL. These are really low-paying jobs. You're working tremendous hours like you would be in the NFL for no recognition. And the opportunity to go from the NFL to the UFL back to the NFL was non-existent. No one actually expected it to happen, but Mike McDaniels does it because he knew that he had made a friend in Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan calls him when he goes to the Washington Redskins at the time, and he hires Mike McDaniel as an offensive assistant. Now, this is where in Washington, Mike McDaniel starts to make a little bit of a name for himself alongside some of his other coaches. If you think about this coaching room specifically, they had Kyle Shanahan, who has obviously been a tremendous coach. They had Sean McVay, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams. They have Matt LaFleur, who is the coach of the Green Bay Packers. And they had a bunch of other pro-caliber coaches as well. So McDaniel's essentially just trying to make a name for himself in a room of what had become almost legendary head coaches very young in their career. I mean, this Washington room was absolutely stacked. It's quite frankly embarrassing that the team wasn't a little bit better than they were, albeit the offense was pretty good, which is where these coaches were mostly focused. But this starts the reign of him just following Kyle Shanahan wherever he goes. Kyle Shanahan goes from the Redskins to the Browns. He follows him there as a wide receivers coach. Then Shanahan goes from the Browns to the Falcons. McDaniel follows him there as an offensive assistant. Then obviously Shanahan goes from the Falcons to the 49ers when he gets hired as the head coach. McDaniel goes there as well. First, he starts as a run game specialist for 1 year. Then he spends 3 years as the run game coordinator. Then in 2021, he gets promoted to offensive coordinator. The team does really well, and the rest is history. He ends up interviewing for 2 head coaching jobs, including the Minnesota Vikings and the Miami Dolphins. He accepts the job with the Miami Dolphins, and he's been a great head coach so far. I mean, his first year was dampened a little bit by the Tua injuries, but that team started out really hot, and many people thought they were really well coached. This second year, he's now 3-1 on the season. It was the first time in a long time that the team had started back-to-back years 3-0. As I mentioned, he hung 70 points on the Denver Broncos, the second or third most points in NFL history. He easily could have broken the record if he really wanted to. And this team is running some of the most creative play calls that we have seen in professional football history. But this wasn't that easy for Mike McDaniel. And let me explain exactly what I mean. Everyone looks at him and they say, this guy's only 40 years old. He's a prodigy. He knows offense. This is the way the game is heading. He's putting up these gaudy numbers with the Miami Dolphins today. He must have had it perfect. And like I just said, that is not true. I mean, this guy was fired by the Houston Texans. He didn't show up on time. What does he do? He goes to the UFL. He ends up getting a job in the NFL again. And now for the Miami Dolphins, He shows up to practice every single day. He leaves his home at 2:30 in the morning because he promised himself that he would never be late again. He also carries a note card in his pocket at all times that has the number 865 on it, 865. And the reason why he does that is because he was out of the NFL when he got fired by the Houston Texans for 865 days before he got his next job in Washington. So he carries that around as a reminder of, hey, don't screw this up. You got a second chance. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's exactly what he's done. But he has also battled addiction. I mean, imagine being an NFL head coach and going home every single day and drinking alcohol. That's what Mike McDaniel was doing. He said it was becoming a problem when he was reaching his Atlanta Falcons days. He actually checked himself into rehab one day when he was with the Falcons, and I believe it was 2015 or 2016. He ends up going to a rehab facility for 3 weeks, kicks the addiction, and he's been much better since. So this guy has overcome a lot. I mean, he's been clean from an addiction standpoint. He got fired from a job. Fate obviously played a role with his mother meeting one of the coaches of the Denver Broncos and getting him into the sport at a deeper degree. And it's one of the cooler stories that I've seen in sports because he has become super successful in the endeavors that he has tried and ultimately accomplished with the Miami Dolphins so far. So we'll see if he can keep some of this stuff up, but I think it's one of the more interesting stories from a coaching and a personnel standpoint in the NFL and more widely speaking sports today. I hope you guys were able to learn something about one of the NFL's best young coaches. If you did, please do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, let me know what you want to see next, what I could be doing better, and so forth. Have a great day, and we'll talk later this week.